Your outfit, I would have said yes to pretty much
Oh,
anything
that's
you had
amazing.
to say. A bow tie, colorful markers, I'm in for it.
Oh man.
Make sure you have every color for the highlighting purposes.
Oh goodness, I without my notepad, I feel lost. Like I like writing down ideas when I'm.
Oh,
on
you
the
have
go.
a traditional notepad. I love it.
Journalism.
Oh, I love your handwriting as well.
Oh, thank you, bro. I appreciate it. That's awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I'm like striking it out of the park with you, aren't I?
You write so small, I love it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Do you often have people tell you they can't read your writing?
No.
Oh, that means
You know
you're
how
actually a good writer.
Oh, I can write well, but when it's just for myself, I'll just kind of like do it. Like that's for me. Yeah. I can make it accessible. So you're going to be off camera, but may I learn your name nonetheless?
My name's Moss.
Moss.
Yeah.
How do I spell that? M-O.
M-O-S-S.
I've never met a Moss before.
That's just that name I go by sometimes.
Gotcha. Is there a story behind it?
It's just what I would like to be perceived as, if I can be perceived as it.
In life. Moss.
Yeah, through my art and myself generally.
I see.
Yes.
And your art form is?
All things, I don't
All
know.
kinds of things.
There's no medium that's you
Brilliant.
can't use, you know? Yeah.
That's awesome. Love it. Moss, nice to meet you.
You as well.
And you are?
I'm Isa.
How do you spell that?
ISA.
I've never met an Isa before. Have you?
I've met one or two, but not the way that mine is spelled.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Isa. Is there a meaning behind your name?
It's just part of my legal full name.
Gotcha. Isa.
Yeah, I've been exploring different kinds of identities, of course. So
Okay.
changing up the name.
It's pretty cool we're in a time when you can do that exploration without like a lot of stigma or like cramping down on that, right? I really
Absolutely.
appreciate that too. Isa.
What's your name?
Binyam is my name.
Binyam,
You
also
got
a
it.
cool name.
Thank you. We're in a kaleidoscope of uniqueness here.
Yeah, well said.
I like it. I like it. So the way I facilitate this conversation is I've got a list of questions from 1 to 15, and I'm almost sad that you put your guitar away. Is that a guitar? That's a banjo.
This is Moss's banjo, actually.
Oh, you
I
don't
was
say.
Just giving it a spin.
You're just plucking away at it.
Yeah.
Moss, are you one of those individuals that can just touch anything and make it an instrument?
I would say so.
Okay. Give me a moment while I try to feel happy for you.
I appreciate it. There are many other things that I am not skilled at, and I'm very open about them, don't worry.
Which of those things do you wish you had most access to?
I think I have access.
Yeah.
It's just when I weigh the things that I want to do,
Yeah.
I just don't do those things.
Gotcha. That's fair. That's totally fair. Isa, choose me a number between 1 and 15.
4.
4. Okay. So the question, can integrity be sacrificed for the greater good?
That's a complicated question.
That is, hence why it's going to...
Because I don't know, you can have integrity in efforts that work towards the greater good. And so I wouldn't say that they're even necessarily mutually exclusive. But I think that there are cases where somebody could sacrifice their integrity for the greater good. Say if they were forced to change beliefs or change languages by circumstance or something like this. Maybe it was something that they vowed they never would do if it came to them, but then they found themselves in that circumstance and they had to conform to something they never thought they were going to.
Mm-hmm.
And so they might sacrifice that part of themselves that they held on to, that sort of integrity, and then
Just to survive, you mean, right?
just to make it,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
sometimes you have to,
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
to change.
Yeah. And I almost think that there are many in that setting, wouldn't you say, Moss, culturally, who are just trying to survive because they have to, but
Yeah.
it goes against the grain of like what they believe is integrity for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate, thanks for giving the example too. That was really helpful. What do you think, dear?
I find that integrity is very fluid.
Okay.
So I think integrity is a very important aspect of contributing to the greater good. And integrity is not something that can stay it can stay the same depending on your perspective, but it's more of like a moral gray area. So your integrity can develop based on your circumstance, and then challenging your own personal beliefs is very important for integrity. So if we're considering integrity in like a moral law kind of way, I find that once again it's very fluid. It's a very thought-provoking question. It's a great question. But I find absolutely I find that integrity is very personal and should be subject to change based on the circumstance, like what Moss was saying. So
I think there are some things that with integrity you don't have to let go of. Like you can have core things that regardless of circumstance maintain. Like I'm going to be kind. you can hold on to this with a great deal of integrity, and
Yeah.
when faced with difficult circumstance, if you can maintain it, you don't have to give it up.
It does change based on the situation as well. Integrity is something that has to be fluid, or else, being kind can look one way in one type of way in one day and a different way in another day, kind of thing.
And a lot of people don't understand different ways that you can be kind to people. Like from their perspective,
Yeah.
you shouldn't be doing it, or they
Yeah.
think it's bad for you, or something like that.
Yeah.
But perhaps it's just complicated, and that's the way that you can be kind in a continuing relationship or something like this.
Sure. Okay, let me. This is rich conversation already. Like, appreciate the insights. Let's back up and sort of give me your definition or your understanding of integrity. Where would you start off in your approach to the idea of integrity?
I feel like integrity and values are sort of one and the same. So the integrity that you find within yourself is based on the moral code that you create for yourself. It's very much so a personal concept. So, what was the question again?
Yeah, just how you understand integrity in the first place.
It's a really hard thing to understand because it's so dependent on the person. Integrity is just a way that you can behave and act so you can feel happy about your presence in the world. So whether that's a specific set of rules like morals that you have, or a commitment to live in a specific way, I find.
You agree?
Oh yeah, well said.
Yeah, that's good. No, that was well said indeed. Would you say, yeah, so I like what you're saying as far as the synonymous nature with personal set of values that you develop over time. Are there some hard lines of what does not include in, like, can be interpreted as integrity?
I don't think so. I think if we look at life in a way where we consider things as having harsh lines and boundaries and putting specific actions into boxes, we miss out on the most important part of the fluidity of life. So having a rigid set of rules just limits you and your beliefs, and I find we're really unkind to ourselves at times, trying to say you have to act in this specific way to have integrity. But once again, like Moss was saying, different circumstances in life change the way that you see things. So once again, integrity is fluid. It depends on your mental and emotional state, your physical state, whether you're in danger or not, whether you're in survival mode, which is something that we are often in to protect ourselves, right? So,
yeah. And then part of that evolution of one's personal values really comes from their cultural background that they grew up in, perhaps, or things that they found really compelling along the way, right? So in some sense, it sounds like there's a common acknowledgement of what people understand or interpret synonymously to say, okay, this is what our assessment is. But you're saying that's still very subjective because someone else could have a different vantage point, whether like my form of integrity could include something that you feel is off limits.
I feel like we all have the capacity to understand another's suffering. We were just talking about this before you came. Like, that's, I think, where, like, that. I think that is a true virtue. Like, we can go through different struggles.
Yeah.
I can be affected to a degree of detriment that is only unique to me, and same with you.
Sure.
And when we talk about our experiences, though they may be different and for many different reasons, I can level with you on the fact that we've both felt pain and that we've had to get through it, and I think that this is a sort of integrity as well.
So almost like digging to the common humanity that we can both experience and resonate with, saying we know what it's like to be excited, to worry, to fear, to like that's what you're
Things
referencing.
we share, like we shouldn't. I find that we live in a very divisive era.
Yeah.
Everybody's focused on, and I'm not against labels, mind you, but
Sure.
the more that we have to distinguish ourselves in order to make our identities seen, the more lines we're drawing in the sand. And there is infighting in so many groups where there doesn't need to be infighting that are already marginalized. And it's really difficult to unite people when there's always something that we could choose to be fighting about. And I don't know. It's like identity is an interesting thing, and we have to honor people's identities. I mean, history and culture have shown that there's so many unique ways that people be and are and exist, and all of them are honored and all of them are respected, and we just need to remember those sorts of human things. Like, we're trying to eat, we like to fall in love. Many people appreciate beautiful music. I don't know anyone that hasn't enjoyed watching a sunset or sitting by the river.
Really good. Okay, so going back to what you were saying earlier, Moss, about people just trying to survive and they may have to bypass integrity to do so. Is there a way we can understand integrity as part of trying to survive and keep oneself afloat? And hence, if that is the case, there's like a prioritization or a hierarchical commitment that people play with reference to here's why I value this higher in my form of integrity to try and survive still.
Exactly what you mean. And this is funny because I agree with everything that you said, but I value my own integrity very strictly. I try to, as strictly as I can, because it's good for me. But I don't know. Like, I agree that it is fluid, it has to change. But I think that the broader that you make your integrity, the more things that you have to stick to. And the more things you have to stick to, the harder it is, because you're spreading yourself so thin. If your core beliefs and your core integrity are integral to who you are throughout life, this is the sort of thing that if you meet somebody, let's say every 3 months in the same city, if you are core here, no matter what you're going through, they'll see you as the same person, you know? And holding on to that integrity is important. Who am I in myself? Though I may change, though I may look different next time you see me, am I going to speak to you the same way? Am I going to look you in the eye the same way? Will I listen to you like the way I did last time, you know? If you maintain these things, then this is integrity into oneself. It's not difficult to maintain, I think.
Sure.
But attention is thin.
Issa, tell me a little bit about the formation of one's integrity. Ought it to be figured out externally with others, sort of inputting, or should it be wrestled with internally where one's like, ooh, this is what it's for me?
I think it's very important to have the balance of integrity, because when we're talking about a specific set of beliefs, we have to acknowledge the polarity of it. So what would you say the opposite of integrity would be?
That's a banging
If we're going to talk about integrity, right, we have to be able to see the different sides of it all. So
what
how
is
do
the
we...
opposite of integrity?
Exactly.
Yeah. Let me rest with that one for a moment. That's a really good question, darling.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of, because we're talking about how your integrity is like those core values that you have and how you continue to be that same person on the inside. But I find it lends itself a little bit to deviance theory, because a lot of the ways that we find our own integrity is by testing societal norms and boundaries to see what is accepted and what is unaccepted. Okay. So what is the opposite of that? How do we define integrity? Is it the core values like Moss was saying, or is it something that you've grown up with, beliefs that have been passed down? Is it something that your parents told you that you should do? Is it something that you've decided that I need to behave in this specific way to keep myself here, So
I'm going to propose a couple of words. In my estimation of integrity, I think of the idea of aligning my values internally with my actions externally. And so the opposite I would suggest is desynchronous from synchronous. So from synchronization of internal values with my actions externally. Why this is a big deal for me is experience of living years of desynchronicity. Oh, that's a big word. But along those lines, we're just going to make up the English language while we're at this.
Anyways.
But along those lines, a great question. But I was thinking, what does it look like for one to be out of alignment? Alignment, there's another word, right? Out of alignment from, here's what I believe at the core, but here's me not actually following through. And so when I think of integrity, I'm just not able to commit to the things that I feel strongly about, value system-wise. That's what I'd propose.
Absolutely. I find when we're out of alignment, we behave in ways that are out of integrity, right? So that's very much so connected in that type of way.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is that whenever you're out of synchronicity, you don't feel right.
Right.
And it's going back to those internal compass feelings. So how do you propose your own integrity when you're not sure how you feel because of the societal expectations that we have against feeling? So that's the one thing that comes into my mind, is how do you negotiate those boundaries when the lines are blurred?
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but that's what came up.
You're getting close. You're getting close. Because I guess I was asking, is it internally driven or is it externally informed? And so what I heard you were saying is at some point you have to figure out for yourself. You're brought up in a cultural context in which you were told right versus wrong, and then your theory that you were referencing earlier, that I forget the name of it. It was
deviance
the
theory.
deviance theory. Yeah.
I find that your integrity comes from within you, and you kind of have to test it out around others and find what means something to you, but then having collaboration from other people can change that in the best way. whether it's finding different boundaries for yourself or figuring out what feels right and what's in or out of alignment.
Yeah.
But I feel like the entire world, we're all just collaborators. So I think we'd be remiss if we didn't take other people's like thoughts, opinions, even when they push our boundaries, to really realize what those internal values are.
May I steal that question? That is an excellent question. That was so good.
Absolutely.
Man, I really appreciate it. All right, so I'm just gonna move my notepad so I don't lose it. We got some geese. I know. There's this guy on Instagram. He calls these birds, I guess.
Cobra chickens.
Yes. And then I see like tourists who get a little close, to try and interact with them, and I feel like saying it might be at your peril to go that close, but
They're not so mean.
they're not so mean. They're pretty tame. I'm just gonna assert, hello there, I see you.
Just hiss at you.
No, he saw me moving my foot to like, he's like, my cameras are off limits here.
If you give them peace, they'll give you peace.
Just like the rest of the living things.
Yeah, indeed.
So my podcast is specifically intended to try and inspire young guys towards living with integrity or considering what is
Specifically?
young guys specifically.
Fantastic.
I appreciate it. Why do you say fantastic?
I just care about the issue of masculinity.
Tell me more.
It's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say so too. But you resonated with the young guy specifically, though.
I am this, I am a young guy.
Little guy.
It's
I'm just a
personal for
little guy.
And I aim to do it hopefully not patronistically, brother.
I understand what
Yeah.
I mean. And to be completely honest with you, the more things that I learn, and like, it's cool and all,
Yeah.
it's cool to progress, get
Yeah.
better at shit.
Yeah.
But I don't know anything. I'm a baby,
Gotcha.
I get taught shit every single day from everything that I look at, and
I must say, your insights already lend me to believe you have some things sort of wrestled with, which I appreciate too.
certainly.
Even while you're still figuring stuff out. So I appreciate your humility.
I had to learn how to do this as well.
Yeah, yeah.
You can only burn so many bridges with people that you love before you realize you should change how you operate.
And that goes back to your integrity question and bouncing it off of other people as well. So learning how to interact in a society, I can't really speak on the experience of a young male, but as someone who is socialized as a female, there are very different boundaries to have, and the integrity that has been pushed on by other people and how to interact within a society as well.
So in specific, the question is, just from your observation personally, do you feel young men in general collectively are doing impeccable, amazing in this sphere of pursuing integrity, or are they struggling and fumbling their way forward?
I think that they're doing incredibly poorly, although I have lots of hope.
Yeah.
I think that it's very, very, very difficult. I don't mean to speak that the issues of men are comparable to the issues of anyone else. They are their own separate issues.
We were talking about this earlier as well.
Exactly, yeah. And the issues of men, I think, are deeply rooted in what it means to have ego, and what it means to have a healthy ego and an unhealthy ego. And I don't think that there is enough people trying to understand themselves instead of trying to make sure that everywhere they go they are liked. And because the more that you come to understand yourself, push your own limits, test your own integrity, the more that you change, the more that you're unrecognizable the next time people see you. This is a difficult thing to do, and it's hard to just look in the mirror and take oneself seriously.
So Moss, you're saying there's a lot more distraction with external than internal.
I think that if I may,
Yeah.
like Carl Jung talked a lot about this, but like we have a loss of this idea of spirit, or of the soul and its importance. The human spirit is undeniable. I mean, we've held it across cultures since we've existed. I mean, we've been around for 200,000 years, operating fine until agriculture. There are things that we are incredibly good at. And one thing that we've always held on to was this ability to consider ourselves in some capacity smaller than something else. And you may call this God, you may call this whatever you'd like. But the force of that which is greater than us is something we've always respected. Indigenous cultures knew it, and they practiced it. And they, Cree people pour water to the earth before they drink from themselves. They give back, We've forgotten that connection to everything, and that we are just we're primates, We're this close to being a fucking chimpanzee. Like, we're this close. We're not that out of it. We're still so much in it, and we've forgotten that. And when we look to them and we see how they think we cannot possibly be this way. Surely not. We feel the same feelings they do. They might not have the ability to reason about it and be stoics and whatnot, but I would like to see a compelling argument saying these are not the same feelings, at least. And how do we honor that? And I think that part of masculinity and the issue that men have to wrestle with is fundamentally connected to that. The idea of, sex and sexuality is a very interesting concept growing up as a man. What you're told you have to be, what your position is, through pornography, conversation with your peers. What does it mean to be a man? It gets very closely tied to your capacity for sex in some way. And this is something that men talk about all the time. This is something that they like to talk about. They like to have this discourse. I've heard my dad say some fucking terrible things with his friends, I think that is the sort of unhealthy ego that I mean to say. You have to realize that, yes, as a man, you're going to probably value sex to some capacity. It's good to know that, and it's good to honor it, but it is at no point in control of you. You can always reason with it. And it may lead you to many bad decisions. I know it's led me to many bad decisions. Perhaps this is the unhealthy ego, but you have to look at yourself to fix those problems. Why am I looking at her this way when I don't view her this way? You have to learn how to see people differently, than the way you're told you should. Through cinema, anything.
Yeah.
Conversation with older men, which is why I really appreciate that your podcast is focused on this topic, because one thing that I speak with my friends a lot about is that we don't have a lot of good male elders to look up to. And the more that I'm finding in my community, the better it's been for me. And the advice that I get from my elders here is insurmountable. I had one guy, he fixed my problem in like 5 minutes. I went to him, defeated after a heartbreak. He's like, man, you're like 25, life's gonna go on. I was like, shit, you're right, And it just like, I needed to hear it. And he just said it as it was. He didn't coddle me. He was just like, grow the fuck up, man. I was like, yeah, shit, you're right. And I needed that. And people like yourself are doing that. And so I deeply respect and appreciate it, because we should never be at a point where we're no longer looking for guidance from our elders. And I think this is also something we've lost. And for men specifically, I mean many beautiful, intelligent, and helpful and caring women. I think that women are still womening just fine, but men, I don't know what has happened.
Now, like you were saying, I am focusing specifically on young men, but I've also heard from young men who are saying, we need something too. And I'm like, I don't know your setting as well as I do men, for example, right? But yeah, it seems women do have a few things figured out.
Women know. Women have always known.
What do you think, dear?
I have a very different perspective.
Hear.
I have worked in the service industry for a very long time. I have experienced a lot of mistreatment from men and from people that perceive their power in a very different way. I worked at a fishing lodge. I'm not going to name names or anything, but the way that the men behaved towards the female staff members really showed a very weak and hurt masculinity. The most important thing about being a human on this planet is to respect other people and to make sure that your socialization isn't injuring someone, Like, I've been on the receiving end of some pretty nasty things that I won't go into too much detail about, and it's all from the wounded male ego, is what I have found. And like what Moss was saying, there isn't a lot of guidance and leadership towards building strong men or people that identify as male, or that male energy and female energy exist within absolutely everyone. So the
yeah.
off balance of being able to mistreat other people because you're wounded. A lot of men that I know,
Yeah.
if they had gone through something like Moss, they would be absolutely so angry at women. Instead of looking in the mirror and realizing that's something they need to work on within themselves, they'd blame someone else for it. So that's the one thing I've noticed is the ego side of the male kind of situation there. It's just it's a very hurtful topic for a lot of people because a lot of people as well have been wounded by that kind of perspective. Though I'm sure you've heard the whole discourse for the Barbie movie and everything.
No, I haven't. It's still fairly new in my.
Yeah, so a lot of men, from what I have seen through social media and through TikTok, so it must be true, is a lot of people who have not received the same message of the impact of toxic masculinity on the public, and a lot of people that don't really necessarily realize the way that their perspectives are hurting others. I might be talking in circles. I don't have as much experience with
I
this
don't
as
think
I'd
you
like
are.
to have.
No, I think you have just as much experience as like you do, you know?
Thank you, fair enough. But that's the biggest thing, is realizing that regardless of where your emotional growth is, it's very important as a male to look into that emotional intelligence side. Moss said that he thought women or people that identify as female had more of an emotional growth, like that kind of thing, where it was like the emotional intelligence has been more focused upon. So the reason why that we feel that way is because, once again, of socialization. Men are told they can't be upset, they can't cry, they aren't allowed to have emotions, and that leads us to a generation of men who can't empathize with the fucking rock on the ground, you know? Like, people who have been so emotionally muted because of the ways that they're told that they need to behave.
And that strength is self-repression.
And that strength is self-restraint. Strength can be anything you want it to be, but I personally believe strength is showing emotion and being able to empathize with people and look them in the eye and tell them. There's this one quote that I'm not sure, I might be butchering this, but it said, kindness without empathy is brutality. And I'm not sure what the source is for that, but it's been ringing in my head lately. And it just speaks to how you can say whatever you like, but the way you say it is more important, you know? So that goes for the businessmen I used to serve at my old job that would touch me without my consent, or would speak down to you. And that's very much so, especially here in Calgary, it's a very big issue, the toxic masculinity within the oil and gas companies. It's a lot. It's a fucking whale. That's the thing, is that like people that have these privileges, the Nepo babies, whatever, they find that they're untouchable in a specific type of way because of the privileges that they've had, and that roots back to toxic masculinity. So I find it's a huge issue plaguing our society. There was a graffiti, beautiful throw up that I saw by someone I know, and it was a picture of a man, and it was a controversial opinion, and it said, trans men are men. And then someone replied with discourse and said, no, they're not men, and we're tired of pretending they are. They're women with mental illnesses. If that doesn't show the issues that we have with toxic masculinity, especially concerning the trans community, and the absolute hatred and fear, it's just sad. It's thinly veiled. So there's so many different aspects to this, and we could talk about it all day long, but I don't have a solution to this other than speaking more about emotional intelligence. So I can tell you these issues, but I cannot tell you how I am working to improve it. So that's something that I would like to grow upon as well. Being able to provide those resources to anyone that feels that way, to anyone that has that deep anger, but it's just sadness, you know? So.
Thanks for sharing. I was going to ask some helpful, like if you had a collective of these young men who were interested in saying, we don't know how this works, but we'd like to get better at it, and we don't know where to start, where you'd begin.
Speak to women, honestly.
Speak to women. There's this really fantastic resource on Instagram called The School of Life.
Okay.
They really focus on emotional intelligence. Reading things, there's like so many resources. This one novel, it was really fantastic. It was Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. it's really fantastic. You have to go back to the root of it. You have to find the seed that's not growing properly. It's about reading and resources and expanding yourself and realizing, once again, Moss and I were talking about this earlier, even though I cannot specifically relate to male issues, it would be a disservice if I didn't at least acknowledge it and speak to someone who had those issues, whether it's for people of color, Indigenous people. We can't just pretend the issue is not there just because it doesn't directly affect us, because in the long run, it does affect us because we're part of a society. And the aggression and the anger, like, come on, like, all the wars happened, men were in charge. I know it's a very simplified and bastardized opinion of that, but at the same time, like, it's just, you know? So I find there are many different ways, especially for the industrial revolution, of how we've lost touch with what really matters, and that's each other. So there are many resources that we can share.
Instagram, again, School of...
The School of Life. There's a lot of I have this game called the Confessions game, and it really probes for deeper conversations. And I have a lot of really fantastic workbooks and things. And here's a free ad read for you.
You haven't invested in this at all.
I have not. I mean, here's my promo code.
That's awesome.
But there are lots of resources.
Moss is like, I got another story here. Moss, what would you say to some young men who are... What would you say to young men who are interested in doing better at walking in or with integrity? How would you encourage them to at least consider starting? Isa was suggesting resources on getting to know themselves internally, intelligence, emotionally, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's about it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an absolute monster of a task. It's a leviathan. I mean, to quote Carl Jung again, like, any tree whose branches reach to heaven has roots that go down to hell. And you have to go there to figure out what the hell is going on.
That's a good quote.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I genuinely mean to look in the mirror, seriously, look yourself in the eye, you know? What do you see when you look at yourself? You are a person that other people are perceiving. You can perceive yourself. And if you can at least see yourself, then try to see what is behind your eyes if you don't know what it is.
You mentioned something at the outset, and that is that you are hopeful, even though, like, you're seeing devastation, you're still hopeful. What drives that hope for you?
Well, the hope is people like yourself, people like the elders in this community. To quote one, Asim Overstands in Calgary, fantastic man.
Say the name again?
Asim Overstands, that's his Instagram handle as well.
Okay.
He's a male elder in the community that I value very highly. I appreciate what he does for the arts community, and just for the younger people around him, because you know he's not so much older, but he is a bit older than us, and he's in a position where he can give back in meaningful ways and create in his own capacity. And I think he's doing remarkable work. He's also a videographer, filmmaker, many other things. So check him out as well.
Okay.
Here's my promo code.
Very cool.
No, but yeah, just get to know yourself, man.
Yeah.
It's tough. You're gonna fuck up a lot. You're gonna hurt a lot of people's feelings.
But that's life. You have to know yourself
It's
to
gonna
have
suck.
the integrity and to have those values. But you gotta do that shadow work. It's tough. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. But look in the mirror, like what you were
Cry,
saying.
man. Look, like cry. Like break down with your mom, dude. Be like, Mom, I've been a piece of shit. I don't know who to tell. I need to tell somebody. And she'll be like, do you know how many men treated me like a piece of shit that I'm still friends with? And then you'll be like, oh, there are people that grow with you. And one thing that has helped me grow is the women and other that have grown with me through these periods of my life. And the people that I've known from the time I was like 16, 17 and really fucking it up, trying to figure it out, that have seen me grow. And that we can have discourse on it now, and I can see how they've grown. And we can talk about it. And that's a beautiful thing, you don't have to burn bridges. Like, try and go with peace if you can. But if you're causing problems with your penis, it's going to be much harder to bring peace.
And nobody's irredeemable.
Cause problems in other ways because they're easier to fix. Genuinely. Think about it. Don't be a dumbass.
Everyone is redeemable too. Everyone deserves a chance to be better. And just because you might have hurt someone in a specific way, the only thing you can do is continue to be better. And to look at your past mistakes and realize that everyone deserves a chance to grow in that type of way. So for all the men out there, do better, but be kind to yourself, because being mean to yourself is only going to make things harder. So
Something that you said, actually 2 things you said there that I deeply resonate with, dear, is one, I make space for myself first and then for others around me that we're going to change over time. That's part of like my essence as a human, as I'm changing over time. And also on top of that, how to make space for the mistakes, the fumbles, the ways I screw up. That's part of, I'm not going to stop there, but how can I give permission for myself to grow through those, and then also those around me too, right? Same question I asked Moss. Isa, do you feel optimistic or pessimistic when you look at the landscape, especially from your painful background that you were just disclosing?
I feel incredibly optimistic. You can't dwell on the things that make you upset. I don't like to hold space for that, because how else are we supposed to grow? The only consistent thing in life is change and growth. But how could we be pessimistic when there's so many resources and so many men that are trying to do better? And just because one is shitty, that doesn't mean everyone is. But at the same time, it doesn't mean we can disregard the way that things have happened in the past. So I think that I have to work soon, but capitalism. But but still, there's always room for growth. There's always a chance to be better. So why not have a little optimism? And when I was traveling, I had a really great friend named Hugo, and he said the most beautiful thing to me that rings in my mind every time I'm feeling a little sour is to be kind to these people, be gentle with these people, because as you're growing, people deserve grace. And yeah, I fuck up constantly. But if I'm not kind to myself and I don't revise the voice in my head, how am I supposed to hold myself to a higher integral standard if I can't even, accept me for where I am at the moment? So accept where you are, take the mental stock, and move forward.
Last question for you both. Any questions for me?
I don't think so.
You're good.
I don't know. You have a nice face.
Thank you. As do you, brother. And you want it to be off camera, so I'm just going to forgive you on behalf of all the viewers who are like,
Thank you.
Don't worry, viewers, he's very handsome.
he is. But we want to also...
Bogwitch. Jesus Christ.
No, I do want to honor your request, though. This has been a really, really meaningful conversation. Thank you for being part of it,
Thank you for stopping by.
The pleasure was mine, honestly.
We have to shut ourselves out, of course, because, entrepreneuring is simply a part of life.
Wait, are you going to shout yourself out, too?
Both of us.
Oh, both of you are?
Is that all right?
Absolutely. I would love that. Yes.
If I may.
Absolutely.
Well, okay, hello. We're artists in the city of Calgary. Where are you from? Where do you do this usually? Just Calgary?
Yeah, I live here in the city.
Okay, cool. Fellow artists.
Absolutely.
Well, we are also artists. You may perhaps see our names on walls or other things, or music on the streets and whatnots. But feel free to say hello. I'm sure you'll recognize us.
What's your handle?
The handle, though.
Oh, it's... No. Oh, yeah. It's. I just don't want to say it, at mbwm.moss.
Would you repeat that, darling? Just so we have it twice.
Nobody can... I don't know if I speak poorly. I think I
No,
do.
you spoke well. I like repeating things so that I have it twice.
M-A-X... Oh, no, that's fucking wrong. That's just my name. mbwm.moss. Oh, Lord. Letters, Instagram, social media. I hate it, but I need it.
I'm going to make sure to tell you guys when I post this as well in a week's time or so. That would be amazing.
My handle is Bella Doing Something. I'm an artist and an apprentice tattoo artist as well. So if you want to, and so is Moss, so we're both on that journey. So if you want an apprentice, a very reasonably priced tattoo, and you want to give me some skin, give me a shout and I will be happy to have another canvas.
Brilliant.
Give us your skin.
You guys are delightful. Isa and Moss.
Yes.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
The pleasure was mine.
Thanks for the chat, dude.
Awesome. You're so welcome.